Is 6:02 p.m. I now call to order a stationary task force meeting of July 17th, 2025 at 6:02. First order of business is roll call. Staff, please call the roll.
Member Garg. Member Collins.
Present.
Member Evans.
Present.
Member Scher. Member Huff.
Present.
Member Nguyen.
Present.
Member Lung.
Present.
Member Mayor.
Here.
Member Andrusek.
Here.
Member Plain.
Here.
Member Stockwell.
Here.
Thank you. We have no absence tonight. We have a full house. Thank you. And then declaration of procedures is next. Staff, please read the SATF meeting procedures into record.
Meetings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the SATF directs all activity during the meeting. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent meeting. Special procedures or time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Copies of the current agenda and any staff reports for each item on the agenda are available online on the Station Area Specific Plan website as well as on the city clerk's website.
Thank you. And we will now move to the consent calendar.
Procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted or approved by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. We have one item on the consent calendar, which is the meeting minutes of June 19th, 2025. And if only the members who are present at the meeting could vote on those, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a quick show of hand on who all were at the last meeting? Okay, so we have the option of feedback from you. Okay. So I'll take a vote and then we'll have hand raised so like we know like who actually voted for the consent calendar item. You have to you have the option of saying no, saying against or oppose or abstain if you're not voting for it. So can I give, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar item?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion, Member Evans. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Member Plain. Those who are in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
You got it? Okay. Those who are opposed? And those who are abstained? Thank you. Motion passes. We'll move to general business, and I'll hand this over to staff.
Great, thank you, Chair Long. So tonight we are going to have a presentation on the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Extension Project. We'll be given an update by VTA staff. So we're joined today by Brent and Ali. So I will turn it over to them and they have a presentation they're going to share.
Welcome. Thank you.
Here with my colleague. I'm Ali Mustafa with the External Affairs team, helping VTA with the BART Silicon Valley project. And he's one of our primary points on our team for the Santa Clara Station area. So I wanted to just thank staff for having us here tonight and thank you all and a couple of members who suggested we come to the task force and present on the project. So we'll be giving you an overall update today on the program and where we're at and giving you a good construction update as well. So we're going to cover tonight kind of where we are with the project, some cost saving efforts that we're really working hard on, We want to talk about some recent news on the project with regards to our contractor, for those that have been following the project in the news, talk about other updates, and then give you a good construction update on the project, and then talk about ways that you and the communities that you represent can stay informed and involved in the project as well, okay? So to orient those that aren't as close to the project as maybe some of you, we wanted to kind of bring people into focus here on the Bay Area and remember why we're working on phase 2. VTA delivered phase 1 of the BART Silicon Valley overall program in 2020. And that actually did build 2 stations in our county. So one in Milpitas and one in Berryessa. If you haven't had a chance to ride BART from either of those stations, they're beautiful. And I recommend you check them out. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on phase 2, which is a further 6-mile extension of phase 1 deeper into our county through downtown San Jose and into Santa Clara. And really our goal here is to close this gap that we have in our regional rail system, right? So with BART crossing the bay, coming down the East Bay and into San Mateo County, and we have Caltrain going up the peninsula through your city in Santa Clara, and this small gap that we have in the regional rail network. That's what we're really attempting to close with BART phase 2. The 6-mile project, 5-mile subways, 4 stations, and a maintenance facility spanning the border of San Jose and Santa Clara. So let's zoom in a little bit here. Zooming into the alignment, we have our 4 stations here, starting on the right side of this graphic in orange. This is the Berryessa station in San Jose, and it will continue into a subway before 101 with the first below ground station at 28th Street and Little Portugal in East San Jose. The next station will be in downtown San Jose, also a subway station in the core of downtown between Market and First Street. And then a station connection at Diridon next to the existing Diridon station across from the SAP Arena before it will curve back up and then cross 880 and into the city near Brokaw, the city of Santa Clara, with the final station, or when we're in Santa Clara, we like to say the first station of the project, next to what will also be a maintenance facility as well, between the airport and the existing railroad corridor. So that's our alignment, 4 stations, 6 miles, 3 below grade subway stations, and the Santa Clara station being at the existing grade street level. Our project schedule has us already in construction. So this is a unique project. We're doing construction and still delivering design on the project at the same time. So we started early construction last summer and have now really moved into that major construction phase with a lot of activity happening out at what we call the West Portal behind the airport. And we're building something called a launch structure where the tunnel boring machine will eventually launch. So I'll talk about that later. Our goal is through getting through major construction, having testing, and then delivering revenue passenger service in 2037. So I don't think we could not come to you tonight and not talk about project funding, right? The project's in the news, a lot about funding and about a funding gap that we are really trying to address. And that's what we've really been focusing on this last year. So in last summer, we had a major announcement from the federal government of a commitment of about $5.1 billion to help fund the program. But that was not the full amount that we asked for as an agency. We asked for closer to over $6 billion. So we have a gap. It's a range of about $700 million to $1.2 billion that we've been trying to fill. A little recent good news that we've had is one of the ways we've been trying to fill that gap is not only reduce costs of the project, but also look for other sources of funding. And we just secured $100 million from the state this past month to help us close that gap from the SB1 program. So that was a major milestone that we can all celebrate. The state continues to fund this project and has done so continuously over the last 20 years and really sees its potential for our riders. All right, so let's talk about cost savings. I do want to set up this part of the presentation with a little bit of framework. It's important that we have a framework so that you all understand how we are looking to save costs on this project. We are still looking at a 5-mile tunnel. We are still looking at 4 stations with the goal of opening in 2037. So this cost savings effort right now is not looking at removing stations or changing the alignment or changing our environmental commitment that we have to the federal government and to you all as taxpayers. That's really important kind of level setting that we want to do. So with the $5.1 billion commitment that we received from the federal government last summer, we moved into something called New Starts Engineering. This is really important for us. It allows us to progress the design. It was the second largest award that the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, has ever granted for a transit project. So that is huge. The only other largest grant is in New York that's larger than that. But in order to secure that funding and move the project forward, we really need to reduce our costs to close the gap. We have to continue to find alternative funding sources, and we have to kind of strategically plan the project to stay on schedule so that we can submit that application to FTA. And there are 3 things that we really have to do to realize that. I'm going to dive in a couple of slides to what the cost savings look like. That's one. We also need to ensure that we can afford this project, right? So not only we have a budget, but we have to make sure that we can deliver it under the budget that we actually have. And that means we have to have confidence from the industry, those that are building the project for us and for the contracting community that is going to help us deliver this project. And so I'll also talk about a recent decision our board made to change the current contractor that we have working on the project in an effort to help us save costs. And then the third thing is our goal, our continued goal of pointing towards that full funding and grant agreement, which secures this funding from the Federal Transit Administration, which allows our agency to reimburse us for about 40% of the overall cost of the project. That's that $5.1 billion. It's a huge part of the project. So we got to keep the project moving forward. So we've tried to tackle our cost savings through a multi-pronged effort, and it's what we're calling a series of levels. So we looked first at some of the items on the top, if you will, some of the items that we thought we could address the easiest. Level 1 savings, we call them. Then those did not, unfortunately, secure enough savings for the project. Those yielded about $300 million of savings. And we worked with many of our stakeholders, including a lot of our community members and our board members, reviewing those efforts. They include station changes, savings, changing the yard where we're going to be building the trains, and some configurations of the tunnel. Our level 2 savings, we worked on for another period of time. That helped us save about an additional $50 million. And now we've had to move into some deeper cost savings efforts. So the board gave us direction as staff to really go to a deeper level that really pushes the savings up against those environmental guardrails. So really looking at every possible thing we can do. And most of these level 3 savings have to do with changes of construction methodology or different ways that we would actually have to construct the tunnel. They're not kind of the surface level changes that we can make very easily. So those things could include changing the size of the tunnel. So we have a couple of scenarios that we're going to start to talk to the board about in the next 2 months about actually changing the size of the tunnel, possibly procuring a second boring machine and concurrently tunneling possibly, or changing how we actually construct the tunnel itself. So this really poses some different challenges, but could potentially yield some higher costs for us. And we're doing this alongside our federal partners, which is really important. So they are involved every step of the way, and we're going to be having some workshops with the Federal Transit Administration to kind of share these scenarios with them. Okay. So where are we? We're at that dot on the top of the screen. That's where we are. This slide always makes me laugh when I present it. But we're making progress. We have a task force of subject matter experts lots of tunneling experts working on this, a lot of independent resources really trying to help us as staff, and then just engaging stakeholders on the process as we go through it. So being very transparent with our board, coming to groups like you all, sharing what we're doing on the project, sharing with our community working group members, which several of them are sitting here at the table today, sharing with our key partners, our staff, our other transit agencies that we're working with. And then another item that we're going to be doing this summer is actually calling in a group of independent experts, and they're going to do a peer review, and it's going to be, this is really an effort that's supported by the Federal Transit Administration. So we're going to have 3 other agencies review these new level 3 scenarios with us as independent agencies that have recently built tunnels in the last 5 years, and really just share their best knowledge and experience with us. And that will be, again, transparently shared back out to the board, those findings, and with the community in a couple months once that peer review is completed. But let's dive in again a little bit closer to your home. Let's talk about some of the changes and how the costs have affected some of the elements close to home here in Santa Clara. So what we're looking at right now, and I don't expect you to understand or see what all the colors are, but what we're looking at is the maintenance facility for the project. This is where the trains will be cleaned at night, fixed, their new wheels put on, cars will be washed, a lot of workers will work here at night, getting the trains ready for operation service. And on the right hand of this graphic, we're going to zoom in. This is close to Brokaw. On the very right-hand part of this graphic is where the station entrance will be. So this is where the pedestrian undercrossing goes under the tracks currently, pops up on Brokaw, and you'll come out, and the new, what we call head house for the Santa Clara station will be on the right-hand side there. What was previously here behind the station was a multi-structure, multi-tiered parking garage. Parking garages are very expensive. So one of the items in one of the level 1 and level 2 cost savings was removing the multi-story garage and building an at-grade surface lot. So we were able to fit the amount of required parking that we need for the station at grade level. But what this required was really working really delicately and detailed with our BART partner. So we had to reduce the size of the maintenance facility. We had to redesign it. We had to move things around. We had to shuffle tracks. And we had to really get some variances from BART to make that happen so that we could build an at-grade lot. And this saved in the range of tens of millions of dollars for the project. We couldn't come to you all and not show something that you all are working on, that WRT is working on, that staff in the city is working on, which is the vision for around the station. So just kind of orienting us to, you all have seen this. This is from the preferred concept that was presented to you all last month. But, you know, it calls out the plaza idea, some of the land uses. We just wanted to call attention to the Art Paseo Bridge, the idea in the plan. And in the graphic here, what would have been the multi-story parking garage, kind of the large white block there at the top of the screen. This idea in the plan, we just wanted to transparently share that, you know, to deliver this vision, there would be some requirements that have to be met. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, but we wanted to just share with you all a little bit more details about what it would require to maybe build a Paseo or an art bridge like this in the future. So we worked with our BART partners, and they shared with us some of the criteria that they have in their design guidelines. We wanted to pass this to you all tonight, and then we'll share that with the consultants as well. But building a bridge like this would require barriers on the bridge. Likely the bridge would have to have opaque walls, and that's to prevent people from throwing things or dropping things potentially onto the operating tracks. It would require additional review, and it would have to be built within the existing framework or constraints of the yard, right? So there could be potential right-of-way challenges or real estate changes. But the idea is possible. It's not impossible to build a structure. So we wanted to share that with you all because we know that that's part of the vision for the station area plan. All right, how many of you have been reading the news about the project? Us included. I know Monica has as well. She's been in the news as part of the project. Thank you for advocating for transit, Monica. We appreciate it. So our board made a big decision lately in June to what we call off-ramp our existing tunnel contractor. This was a decision not taken lightly by the board and by staff. This was months and months of effort of negotiating and working with our team and our task force to determine whether the current contract, which is a joint venture of Kiewit, Shea, and Trader, could really deliver the project under the budget that they were contracted to do it under. And the board decided that we needed to move forward with a new contractor and go back out to the market, break up the tunnel contract into some more competitive packages, and get some better pricing to deliver the tunnel. So again, not taken lightly, but this was a big decision for the project. What it also means is the work that is still currently continuing will continue. So the contract, which I won't go into all the details on, allows us to make the decision to retain parts or elements of the contract. So KST is going to continue working on the structure in Santa Clara and San Jose, which we call the launch structure, and also show you some pictures of what that looks like. That in its own right is about $400 to $500 million worth of major construction work. And that work is on the critical path to keep the tunnel moving forward. So we'd like to walk you through kind of what that looks like here today. If anyone's been out near the site or ridden the trains or stood in the transit center or driven down Coleman, you've probably seen a lot of tall cranes in the air. And this is a bustling site right now. So I want to zoom in onto this part of the project on the west end of the project in Santa Clara, there circled in red, what we call the West Portal, or where the trains will start to daylight and come back up to grade. To orient you to the site on the right of this graphic, I realize it's really small, is Brokaw there, yep, where the orange dot is. And on the left is 880. So this is a very long linear site. On the bottom of the graphic is the airport in Coleman, and on the top is Santa Clara University and Campbell Avenue. So within the core part of the site, we are building essentially a huge box shown there in the top left in turquoise. That is what is the launch structure. It's a large box underground with a ramp where the tunnel boring machine will eventually be launched. So it will be placed in the tunnel, and this is where one of the one boring machine, potentially two, but definitely one boring machine will launch from this location. It's over 130 feet deep. So 130 feet deep. So that's basically building a 10 to 12 story commercial building underground. Essentially picture that. There are not a lot of tall buildings like that in our area, right? Unless you're in downtown San Jose or downtown Campbell. So it's large. We've also been building a noise curtain, which is about 2/3 the entire length. Yep, it extends past that turquoise box all the way past the student villas to help protect those sensitive residents that live next to the site. That allows us to do work during the day and also do work during the night. So right now we're doing about 2.5 shifts worth of work out here. So about 20 to 22 hours of work. That's okay. So right now we're working Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. We're building large support walls underground. We're digging, we're pouring concrete, we're forming rebar. We're assembling new cranes. I think there's 8 cranes on the site right now. A lot of other ground activities are happening, and you may be noticing some trucking activities as well. You can see on the lower right there, a noise monitor. That's for reference. So we're always doing active live noise monitoring as well. So there's 24/7 noise monitoring, dust monitoring, air quality monitoring, and also vibration monitoring per our environmental clearance that's happening continuously out here. Most of our trucking activity, it's a question we often get, so we like to talk about it, is leaving the site from Newhall Drive. So about 75% of the activity is leaving out of Newhall, and about 25% of the activity is leaving out of Brokaw. And that's because we have more residents that live in the new Gateway Crossings development there off Coleman. And then we also have the Costco Center, which of course is a huge regional draw, right? So most of the trucking activity has been moved to the other side of the site. So this rebar cage on the left here, this rebar cage is 90 feet tall. This is not the largest cage that we're building. The largest one will be 130 feet tall and weigh 300,000 pounds and will take an entire day to lift in the air to basically be placed into a slurry mixture and lowered all the way down into the ground. And this is one of 120 cages that will require to be built to build basically 2/3 of the structure. So 120 of these are going to be placed and form a wall, and then we pump concrete down into the ground and it forms a wall essentially in the ground. And then we come back and we actually excavate in between them and we brace them so it doesn't collapse. All simultaneously, there are a series of wells around the structure that are actually drawing down the groundwater. You know, we're in an agricultural area, right? We have a very high water table, and this work is being done in some of the most challenging soil conditions that you can actually do this type of work in. It's really impressive to see all the craft and the staff out there working safely. It's really amazing. Just wanted to show you also a picture of what the noise curtain looks like up close. It's kind of like a really thick comforter made up of multiple layers of fiberglass and plastic. They're kind of layered together. And they really help dampen and reflect that noise. What a noise curtain does is it mainly actually deflects the noise and angles it up over the homes or over the thing that you're trying to protect. In this case, it's homes. It does do some absorbing, but mainly it's meant to deflect the noise. So it just kind of pushes it up and out of the way. It's about 80% done, by the way. Our team loves to talk about these. I'm not sure they're that impressive. This is a desander. What it does is it basically separates the soil and the slurry mixture, and it separates it into multiple parts, all this earth that's being pumped back up out of the ground when the cages go down, and it actually allows them to reuse some of the material to pump it back into the next section. They are pretty impressive, but they just look like a giant engine to me. So a picture of one of the new cranes being delivered on the site as well. It's like a 200,000 ton crane, I think it can lift. So these are the large digging arms that are actually digging the walls. That's our construction director, Sarah Wilson there. You're gonna see a lot more of her if you're watching the news or reading stories. She has over 20 years of tunneling experience in the Bay Area. We are really lucky to have her at VTA on this project. She is really an expert in her field, and this is her standing next to one of the large slurry rigs there. She loves talking about tunnels. It's great. So how you can stay informed, we've got a lot of different ways. Our team loves to come to groups like this and present. So we can always come to you. We can come to any groups that you represent in the community as well. We work with the university, we come to other groups. We're happy to come meet with you. You're also happy to come to us or listen into other meetings to gain more knowledge. We're going to be talking more about these level 3 cost savings on August 1st at a workshop, and then also at August 14th at an oversight meeting. And that is a committee that specifically only hears items at VTA about BART. So that committee just covers BART related items. There'll also be another similar presentation to a joint board meeting. That's the VTA board and BART board. They meet actually 3 to 4 times a year and share knowledge. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have that peer review happening in August, September, and those results of that will likely be shared a couple of months afterwards. We have a quarterly newsletter. It just came out. You can find it on social media or vtabart.org. That covers program updates, things like our contractor change, project news, program related things. And then we have a monthly update. If you just want to know about construction and see cool pictures about construction and figure out when we're going to be working or what noise will be happening, that's the update for you. That comes out monthly. You can get any of this on social media. And then this will be a nice, fun, more informal event. We're doing a coffee at Newhall Park down on Campbell Avenue in 2 weeks. So a couple of our team will be out there. We'll also have members of Supervisor Young's staff out there and members of San Jose Council District 6. We're also going to extend the invitation to you all as well, including your council members if folks want to come join us. But we'll be at Newhall Park and we'll just have staff out there willing to talk to anyone. We'll have some coffee and donuts for you all. So come join us. And we'll leave this up there while we take questions. So these are our phone numbers and project website. hope I'm at 20 minutes and I think we have some time for questions if you all have it.
Thank you
Are
for
we
that
on schedule?
presentation.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there any members with any questions and comments? I see Member Evans.
Yeah, I guess my first question is, I know you showed some new pictures of the cost savings. Is there a place we can find the zoomed in version of that cost savings, the changes you made to the new hall yard and the parking? And 'cause I don't think that's been shared with the CWG yet in this final form.
Yeah, so we're kind of previewing it here with you all. So it hasn't been circulated fully publicly, but it will be in the presentations coming up. And it will be in the next CWG presentation as well. But we can share this deck with you all. So it is in this presentation tonight. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I had a question about the design guidelines you mentioned. Or who sets those? Is that a BART requirement or?
Yeah, a lot of the guidelines that we have to design for point towards a document called the BART Facility Standards. So that is a BART document. It's a significant document which has a lot of criteria and objective standards that we have to design the system for. So even though VTA and us all as taxpayers will own the system, BART will be the operator. So as the operator, we have to design their stations and the tunnel to a lot of their specifications.
What if you didn't follow their specifications? Would they just refuse to operate?
Well, we have an agreement with BART. And so when we entered into that agreement in 2000, the agreement states that we'll design to their standards. So if we don't design to their standards, we have to seek variances. And in some cases, they're willing to work through that and grant us variances like changing the size of the yard and things like that. But in some variances, some things, we simply can't change. They're just really hard line requirements. Typically, those are ones that have to do with safety and security.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Other members? Go ahead.
Brent,
Hi, Jill.
I do have a couple questions. The update about the lack of parking garage is intriguing. And it's a wonderful opportunity for transit-oriented development. And all these folks around this table really care about that. We've been talking about that a great deal. So I'd like to ask you to maybe share some insights with us on, I'm assuming that you've done some work to analyze the feasibility of mode of access, mode of arrival to the BART station in the future, given this new scenario of surface lot parking only. Maybe you can share with us how that penciled out, and then and if there were any critical assumptions that made it work. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about very quickly is, maybe I'll remember it once you answer. All of a sudden, I had a brain blip.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think it's a two-pronged question, but yeah, we do mode of access studies, if you will, or access planning studies to determine how people are going to come or what modes will be entering the station, whether you're arriving by auto, bicycle, or walking, or taking a private shuttle, or a taxi, or an Uber. And there are only really actually a couple changes. Even though the garage is being removed, one of the driveways is being extended a little bit further down. I can't remember if it's Wando Way or Champions Way. Excuse me, it's on Champions Way. And then some of our frontage is changing slightly as well next to the station. So we have a little bit more opportunity without the garage to have some more passenger loading area or pick up and drop off on this side of the station, more space than we had before than without the garage. But other than that, the majority of the changes really happened within the site and really finding space for a larger layout area for the parking. Hopefully that answers your question.
May I ask, what is the net difference in the number of parking spaces?
There is no net. It's actually the exact same amount. So that was one of the challenges that we had to work with. So there used to be about 500 spaces in a smaller space because they were stacked. And now they're spread out a little bit more, but we still have the same number of spaces. It's a requirement that we have to deliver because that is a number that we are environmentally cleared for. So when I was talking about the guardrails and the framework, we had to come up with these solutions to still meet to stay within that same framework. So if we change the framework, then we have to do some additional environmental work, which we're
Understood.
trying to avoid.
So the one thing that I just wanted to double check on, to sort of clarify and check in with you. When we've been doing our work here at this committee, we've been not looking so much at pedestrian and bicycle access. We've really been looking a lot at land use planning. My assumption has been, just based on my own personal experience with working on BSV2 extension and the TOD framework for VTA specifically prior to this plan, is that VTA is doing the actual pedestrian planning work, pedestrian access and the like in-house. Has that changed at all since this new, revisiting of how the project is budgeted and cost savings and the like?
We haven't really done a lot of additional access or active transportation planning work. It's mainly been focused on peer engineering, but yeah, and to support the current project, a lot of that has been done by our program management team and other planning experts that we have on the team. Lucky for us in Santa Clara, we already have a really robust transit station within close proximity that supports a lot of these active modes. So we typically look at modes of access like directly on the frontage, and we plan for those. And the station will actually be building some of those along Brokaw and Champions Way. So there'll be like a new cycle track, off-street cycle track that connects from the pedestrian undercrossing that goes under the tracks. There'll be new sidewalks. There'll be connections to the bike lanes on Brokaw and connections that kind of connect to the other network that Santa Clara is planning around Gateway Crossing. So we're integrating with those existing things, or potentially things that may come up in the plan may integrate with those things that we're building directly on the station frontage. Then we also look at kind of the next tier out, which is like how people actually get to that space, right? And we have multiple frequent transit routes in the transit center. We have other regional services. So this station is really well connected already today with Caltrain and all the other regional services that we have there.
Okay, yeah, I just want to get a sense for how we should be plugging in these efforts and what would some sources be for us to access these more detailed station access plans?
Some of the what we call like city facilities design work. So those are like the station access related things that we would work with the city on. Sometimes it's our planning peers here, but it's often other folks within the city like Public Works, who's another project liaison. So those have been worked on over previous years. We can share some of that with you. The work, like access work on the next tier out, I think you're going to hear a little bit about some of that tonight, about what the consultant has thought about for the station area plan for you all. And that's really more work that as an agency to agency, we work together on, right? So VTA and whatever city we're working with, we work together on kind of those modes of access to how they enter the station directly. It's more of a joint effort, and working with the community, you all as well, see what your preferences are as well. Yep.
Brent, great job. Thank you.
Hi, Dan.
The presentation. Yeah, we've seen a couple. I just wanted to ask on the gap. Yeah, you said it's in flux, and we understand that. Is there any way you could shed light into what's on the board for potential cuts other than the tunnel?
Yeah, I mean, the items to date that have got us to kind of that 350 to 400 are some small station savings. So, and we've daylighted those with our working group and with the community. So we took the great vision that we worked on with the community. It had to be shrunk just a little bit to save some costs. Some of the big things that came from those level 1 and 2 were reducing the structured parking garages. So one at Santa Clara and one at 28th Street. That was a large amount. Another big item came from variances in the BART criteria. So like being able to change certain elements of the BART tunnel or design or the maintenance facility. And then the level 3 items that we're going to just talk about here in a week or two with the board are much larger than that. They really focus on the tunnel and the methodology for building the tunnel. So are we going to continue to bore the tunnel? Do we look at not boring all of the tunnel and constructing it in some other way? So our engineers are going to be delivering some of that content in the coming weeks in a little bit more detail. Yep.
Thank you. I had a couple. So you were showing one of the drawings that we had put together, like on our side, and like talking about the pedestrian bridge and stuff. I just want you to be aware that that's the way we propose it, because we had the assumption that the building is going to be there. So like, we don't want to anchor like our assumptions on each other. So I think the committee is probably amenable to think about alternate ways of connecting the two sides if there are different constructions on the other side, like the presentation is going to be. So that's something for us to all keep in mind as a committee. And then I think you just touched on this, because I was wondering, like with the offboarding of the contractor, if you were going to stick with the single bore or go a twin bore or something. So I think you kind of touched on that a little bit in your comment just now, right?
Was that a question?
That was
about-
more of a question,
just an
like,
observation.
am I catching that correctly?
So really the scenarios that are going to be presented in a couple weeks are looking at a range of single bores.
Okay.
So different size single bores. So that's what will be presented to the board. So twin bore is not in one of those scenarios. There has been continued interest in twin bore, and is twin bore possible? Our board has already taken a very strong stance that that is not an option that's going to be pursued. But we have looked at it again because there has been so much interest in it. So there is a report that is going to be released in the coming month that is another take at that twin bore study. So if you're interested in that, that will be posted publicly in the coming weeks as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because like
Yep.
my understanding was like single bores could be much deeper, and then a twin bore would have been like a little shallower, and that would be like a completely different environmental study, like on how to do it. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Single bore is being pursued, just different ways to do single bore. Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Okay,
Thank you.
Hey,
thanks
I
for having
could
us.
have
We
a
really
quick
appreciate it.
question, If I could, it's Jim Stickley from WRT.
Hi, Jim.
Is that okay, Chair?
Yes, Jim, go ahead, please.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Brent. This is really so helpful. Really appreciate just the complexity of the project and the thoughtful way that your whole team is going about it. So thanks for this. I think you're aware that we are definitely looking very seriously at the Benton Brokaw underpass as a primary crossing point in our plan. So we're really interested in the interface of where that comes up on the north side next to BART. So any level of detail that you're able to share of either a more zoomed in site plan, or if you've got even a 3D model of the head house and the entry plaza and all of that, because it's very tight over there, as you know, and we're going to be trying to thread a lot of things through that right of way, and up against your entry plaza and the exit from the current underpass and all of that. So any level of detail you're able to share in that location would be really helpful to us.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jim. You know, as a DTA, we have supported the city's feasibility study. So in an effort to get the grant to support the feasibility study, and we have already, you know, committed to the city to be a good technical partner and be right along there at the table. So if we need to share information, share resources and feedback, we'll be there for as the study progresses in any way we can help.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And Chair, we do need to open public hearing for folks that are online.
Yep, I do see a hand up, so we'll go ahead and open public hearing for this item. Okay, Suds, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Brent. This is Suds. I had a question about the opaque 8-foot overcrossing. That seems like a security problem. I know you don't want people to throw things onto the tracks. Can you do that with glass or plastic?
I don't know specifically that answer to that question, Director Jane, but that's something definitely we could get some more details on for sure and share with you all.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks for the question. I called him director because he's my director, so.
If there are any other public members who would like to comment on this, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I think we're good on public comments. Good?
Yeah, seeing no other hands.
I don't think we need to take any actions because this is just informational. Okay. And thank you.
Thank you guys so much for your time. It's really helpful.
Of course, thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Have a good rest of your meeting.
And we will post the presentation on the project webpage.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think, I'm sorry, one note, I think Jim did have an action. We were going to get him some detail on the undercrossing.
My suggestion is we work staff to staff once that effort kind of gets started. And, you know, typically, you know, there's a request that comes through staff and then we provide whatever criteria or baseline information is needed. Yep.
Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move on to the second item. So item 3, it is our review of the urban design, streetscape, and open space standards for the station area specific plan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we will be having a presentation from our consultant partners with WRT, Diksha and Jim, and they'll be touching on a couple items. They have a mini agenda within the meeting agenda, but more specifically, some updates to the preferred concept that was presented at last month's meeting, and then an outline of proposed guidelines and standards for the actual plan for your comment and suggestions you may have. So I will turn it over to Diksha, and you should be able to, yeah, great.
Hey, give me 1 second. I'll just get set up here, my screen.
Thank you. Welcome back, team.
Hello, good to see all of you. Okay, so Rebecca outlined our agenda. This is sort of a smaller check-in on our end, since a lot of the work that we're doing is on a larger time scale where we're working with our other sub-consultants in their technical analysis to really come to fruition. But let us hop into our first item here, which is looking at the preferred development concepts from our last conversation that we had. So we just made a few changes that we wanted to highlight on our end. We did get a comment that the building in the station area plaza itself was looking very boxy. So we sculpted it further and also tried to angle its sighting so that we could create more visual connect from this intersection towards the train station by angling the building a little away from that region and opening up view corridors from the buildings on the other side. Then we adjusted our building development here to make sure we didn't miss out the Adobe building, the historic building that we had erroneously removed. And then from our conversations last time around the siting of the community recreation center, we added that into our plan area. We also had multiple conversations with the parks planning team to understand the sizing that they require, what kind of program do they want, and as a result, like what shape and siting would be more ideal for them. And this is the leftmost part of the police station parcel that we landed on. And so those are like our quick updates around the preferred development concept. And then last time we did hear about, do we want to challenge the FAA around going taller in certain places? Do we want to like look at having like a tower, which could be iconic? And so we just wanted to hear your feedback on, is this something that we wish to look further into? So this is just depicting like a 20-floor plaza tower. And the city would have to request for an FAA variance since it doesn't land within their existing height limit. And I don't think we propose like doing that in too many places, just thinking about whether we want one iconic element within the station area itself so that it is recognizable in the skyline from a distance. So then coming to the guidelines and standards, we're working on developing these in greater detail, but we wanted to come to you and talk through what are the primary areas of standards and guidelines. And one of the reasons for this is because we will have a form-based code. We did not want to overstep with design guidelines in this plan to allow for a lot more flexibility of their development within the form-based code. So we did go back to sort of like look at the downtown plan and the level of design guidelines that we added there and match that in this case. So one of the areas would be looking at block lengths and making sure that we don't create mega blocks within the plan area. Then creating a public space network that would be required, creating a street network, and honing down on the street classification and their right-of-way widths, etc., for any of the new streets that we would develop. Creating a bike network for the plan area. Creating the maximum allowable building heights. And then having frontage types, where we talked about the retail location, the retail frontage requirements, and also potentially identifying key retail ready locations. And then having typical green infrastructure details for the streets and parks. And these are what some of the green infrastructure details that could be explored would be looking at pervious pavement details, rainwater harvesting and reuse details, bioretention areas, flow through planter boxes, tree well filters, infiltration trenches, vegetated swales, etc. So our sub-consultants at Arup are working through this to create some of these details for us for this plan area. So I wanted to walk through some of the preliminary thinking on some of these key areas that we talked about. So this is one of the key things that we would want to discuss further, which is the maximum allowable building heights diagram. Most of the project area on the other side of the tracks is at an 85-foot height with a maximum of 7 floors. So we're like trying to regulate both with height and floors. And the reason for that being that sometimes we give taller heights, but the idea for that is to provide generous floor-to-floor configurations, but not for a developer to sort of like squeeze the floor-to-floor and add an extra one, which is why we're using both those numbers to regulate the maximum allowable heights. And then there is like a core central area, which is predominantly of Brokaw, which is going where taller towers are allowed, 13 floors and 148 feet. These will obviously be regulated further by step back and setback regulations, so that not the entire parcel obviously doesn't go to that height, similar to how we've shown in the 3D model itself. And then as we move back from that, the interface with the neighborhood is at 3 floors and 40 feet. So the existing zoning in this region currently allows for, I think, 32 or 35 feet. I'm not exactly sure which one. The only reason why we've put 40 feet is to allow for more freedom and articulation of buildings, similar to our conversations for the heights within the downtown. If some buildings want to, even single family homes for that matter, want to just like raise themselves up a little in terms of like that porch, then have 2 stories and then have like an attic or a sloping roof. 40 feet just allows them more flexibility to do that in a better manner. And then on this like edge which is near Martin Avenue, we have 4 floors and 64 feet, which could seem high for 4 floors. But the reason for that is we want to allow flexibility for light industrial construction and different use types, and for lab uses and biotech uses. The floor-to-floor heights are usually much taller, being at a minimum of usually 16 feet. And so we wanted to allow for those spaces to happen within this innovation district. So that is it for the heights diagram. Let's then move on to street network and classification. So we've categorized these in a few different manner, which is looking at what functions they're serving for us within the station area and how we're thinking about them. So the first one being regional thoroughfares, and those would be El Camino Real, Coleman Avenue, and De La Cruz. Then we're looking at community connectors, and the primary one would be Benton Brokaw, and also Franklin from the downtown to the station itself. And then we have a bunch of new streets which we've created through this plan, which would be internal streets, and then a network of pedestrian and bike only paseos within those new blocks that are getting created. We've created sections for these, but they are getting vetted further with CHS, our subconsultants, as well as with the city transportation department. So once they've gone through that entire process, we'll share them out with you hopefully soon. The next thing that we would look at regulating would be the public space network. One of the key things is to make sure that we have enough public space access within it. And so as we all know, there are like key spaces that we've been thinking about having public space and parks, but we also have spaces where we're thinking of creating green buffers, or like connecting trails across to connect our open space network to each other. And so this diagram would highlight the sizing and the dimensions that we're looking for to make sure we when these spaces come about, they're in usable dimensions based on the space studies that we did in the past. And it also highlights the location of the community rec center, a potential location of the community rec center. The fourth thing here is frontage types. So we've looked at these solid red lines before, which is the areas where we're looking for retail frontages within the plan area. And then the second thing that you would see is some of these have dotted red lines. Those are retail ready frontages. And the idea with that is that their characteristics need to be developed at the time of construction in a manner similar to retail itself, but they don't have to have retail uses from day one. It just allows for the market to sort of play out. And if the area takes off and there is, for the developer and the market, it feels like they can have more retail there, those spaces allow for that to happen. Because the physical characteristics have already been there. And many a times they could be other activating uses. They don't need to be just retail. But what we're looking for here is the character of the built environment itself. So those are mostly focused connecting the retail here, drawing people down Benton, and then also connecting the retail and the other.
Oops, it looks like Deeksha froze while she's, oh, there you are. Go ahead, Deeksha. You froze for a moment.
Uh-oh, I didn't realize I was nicely talking.
Yeah, you just
Oh.
explained about the retail ready areas and then you froze.
Okay.
I think she just froze for you, Jim. We heard her.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
Okay.
move on.
So the second area that we're critically thinking about having retail ready frontages are these connections of retail from Brokoff to connecting to the regional retail that we have towards the Costco parcel. So having those frontages also be retail ready to be activating frontages in some form. And the last one is just extending here on El Camino along this frontage, which is close to the train station. So that's some of our thinking around the elements that would set like the baselines for standards and guidelines within the plan. And more of that is being developed behind the scenes, and we will share that with you soon. The third thing that we already did touch upon was the community rec center. And so this is
Deeksha, sorry, before you get into that, so I think that the purpose of these last three diagrams is just to begin to show how the standards will come together. So, you know, we're literally just starting to get into the detail of the standard the standards. As Deeksha said, our sub-consultants are studying some of the things in terms of roadway configurations and utilities and things like that in greater detail now. So, you know, these are just sort of meant to show you that, you know, the direction that we're starting to go in terms of really getting into the detailed definition of the elements of the plan. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Jim. So yeah, coming back to the community recreation center, one of the key things that was identified within the citywide planning for parks and recreation was the idea to have an indoor rec center, which more importantly should have a gym, because that was something that is lacking. So the city, the team is looking at different areas. One of them that they thought could be really good would be the station area, since there is nothing within this region. And so we got basically a square footage from them of roughly the sizing that they're looking for, being 47,000 square feet, and the kind of program that they would want to include within that being gymnasiums, a fitness or dance studio, cardio space, basically an indoor walking track was another element of it, and then lobby and reception spaces and some staff offices. And so taking all of that and putting it in this building, we're looking at creating spaces, something like this, with maybe the idea that they had was to have a gym space and maybe like a suspended indoor like walking track that goes with it and other flex use spaces. So that is what the recreation center that we showed you is modeled after. And then just because this was a shorter update overall, we wanted to share what else is happening behind the scenes right now. So we are working with CHS. We've given them the preferred development concept and the total built out that comes out of that, both in terms of like the residential build out and the projected commercial build out. Detailed open spaces, everything, and they're doing the traffic analysis, looking at regional impacts, as well as looking at the street sections and classifications to see what recommendations and changes that they would have for those. Additionally, we've also kicked off our infrastructure capacity analysis. So a team is working on that, and they're looking at along with just general utilities, they're also looking at district energy and what creative solutions we could have for forward-thinking sustainability within the plan area. And then lastly, we're going to also kick off CEQA analysis because that is supposed to be on a tight turnaround. So we're kicking that off with the city next week, meeting with our CEQA consultants and sharing with them the preferred development concept and the amount of build out that we're looking at for the plan area. So all of this is going on simultaneously behind the scenes. It just takes a little longer for us to be able to like show you the results for that. With that, we would love to open it up for any questions and discussions that you would like to have. And we would specifically look for feedback on other areas of focus, if any, that you feel like we're missing within the list that we'd shared.
Thank you, Disha, for the presentation. Can we do the thing we did last time where we just go back through the sections so we're a little bit orderly on like asking questions and kind of comments and stuff? So we'll just do one section at a time.
Okay, section 1.
Yes, thank you. I think like for each one of those, you had some questions for us.
Oh, yes. This one, we question here was whether we are interested in looking at these taller heights at any key place within the plan area to create something which would be like a landmark in that sense, and whether we would want the city to go ahead in that sense to think about FAA variance.
Thank you. Any questions and comments from members? Let's go
Yeah,
ahead.
what does it mean to get an FAA variance? Like what is the procedure?
So the private developer would have to file the variance with the FAA with all the specifications. And then I believe there's special conditions they can put on the project to how the roof is designed and, you know, the lights and such.
So they put more restrictions in some sense and more, I guess, red tape for the developer, whoever's building it, probably increasing cost.
Oh, yes, definitely. But I think, Diksha, we could make it so it was an option or like a maximum height. We could still have a minimum. So we're getting something of a landmark, but maybe not require that extra step.
Yeah, exactly. We were thinking the way that this would be shown in the plan is that we would show this, do you want to flip back one Deeksha, we would show this as sort of our plan. And then we would introduce this other option that would say, as a possibility, this might be a good place where an iconic building would be appropriate, and that would present the opportunity to go after this variance. But the main plan would respect the current restrictions.
Great,
Can I
thanks,
ask
Ed. Yeah, good.
Follow up on that. So that's, the city wouldn't get that? Sorry? The city wouldn't get that variance, it'd be the developer. So we would zone for 14 and then they'd try to get up to 20?
Well, we'd zone for allowance up to 20, subject to an FAA variance.
Ah, got it. Okay,
But we'd still have a minimum of 14 or,
okay. And then just, sorry, last thing. So you got 20 on the round building, and this is me missing last time, sorry. The buildings to the left, what are they, about 14 or 12?
Good question. Now I'm suddenly forgetting.
Sorry,
Put
Deeksha.
me on the spot. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you. They would be 11 as if their office, they would land at 11, and a lot of that is to do with like the FAA height restrictions right now.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, sorry.
Thank you. I'm just gonna move down the table.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that height at Plaza. I don't know. Oh, is it? Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to envision an energy here and how that's created. I do see just the green space and stuff. Sometimes plazas just end up being dead. I hate to say it. I feel like something has to step down a little bit more respectful to the historic depot. I'm not sure. I mean, I like iconic, but perhaps the question is it modern iconic, like the round building that you're showing? Or is it something, a different flavor that's got, corrugated metal, kind of an assemblage of some buildings, I guess, that then adds some more energy with retail. I know you have retail on the bottom of there, but I'm just trying to figure out where the retail is, but it just feels like, I'm struggling with that against the train depot. Water tower I could see, or modern water tower or something, but I don't know, maybe lower slung and a little more buildings that, not pop-ups, but something around the plaza that kind of have energy, and then you put something in between it, like the green space, but taller on one side, but maybe I'm just struggling with 20 or even 14 for that matter. That's enough for me.
I have similar sentiment. I mean, it's that side of the tracks right now is very dense, and I know we're trying to boost density, but it's going to be a lot it might overwhelm depot and just that area. If you've got six office buildings, 11 plus stories, it could be too much.
You kind of know where I stand on it already as far as the depot goes. I just think that, I understand the modern, I understand trying to create more usage, but it really feels like a contradiction to the area.
Yeah, I do like iconic, and I do like this bold vision, but going off of Rob's points, I think we need to work out the details about the nature of how we're going to make this iconic. That's not just height-wise, but more architectural and style-wise.
Daniel, I'll circle back at the end.
I think I'm okay for now.
Yeah, I have a question. Is the structure up and to the right from the circular tower, that's the historic depot? Is that correct?
That's the historic depot, yes.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see both sides. I mean, I too like the idea of something iconic, But at the same time, I don't want to overwhelm the depot because it's such a, unique historic structure. So I could kind of see it both ways. I like the idea of, maybe it could be iconic in some other fashion besides the height as well. That's a good point.
Thank you. Do you have anything?
Yeah, so it will be, I don't think it matches with the other buildings. Making it iconic is publicly appealing. Like, are you planning to add some art? Like what will be the difference between this building other than the height in comparison to the other buildings?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, more of the same what's been said, but we don't want people just driving by El Camino, passing and blowing right by this. We want something that's gonna be intriguing, that will draw people in. And we're filling that open space with a big building right now. And I think something less dense and iconic's a good word.
Deeksha, do you want to flip back to the base scheme? Because I want to kind of rebuild our logic here. So previously we looked at options of Transit Plaza only, just as a plaza and no development, or Transit Plaza with development. And I think this group favored Transit Plaza with development because in order to provide, all of the amenities of the plaza and the pavilions and, the bicycle parking and everything that we want to do here to activate this space, we need to have something to help pay for that. So the building, the redevelopment site on this, if we can sort of keep it out of the main view corridors to the depot, I think was the preferred direction. And then it was something that needed to certainly step back, respect the scale of the depot, but also not be too boxy. And so that's sort of where we left in our last session. And so I think this is a tricky moment in the planning because, in a sense, we're not designing this, but we still need to introduce the idea of the intent of the plan, which is, all of the things that we've talked about, including this wanting to be something iconic. I think for us, the ellipse came from other ellipses that were starting to take shape. We've got this canopy, this pavilion that both encompasses the existing well structure, but it also offers other opportunities for programming within the pavilion, like a cafe that fronts on the plaza. And then the vertical circulation down to the bicycle parking became smaller ellipses, and that sort of became a theme of the plaza. So I think that's sort of what took us in that direction for the building. But we're not trying to design the architecture. Again, it's this funny place where we need to show something that is expressive of the intent and spirit of the plan without designing it. And the design of all of these buildings would be, their own endeavor. So yeah, just wanted to give a little bit of framing to why we ended up where we are.
So Jim, I appreciate that explanation because I think I think this is helpful to see the sculpting a little bit to some of our members who hadn't gone through this process before, look at the kind of the envelopes that we've worked with in the previous projects and stuff. So it's totally appreciated. I think the sentiment we had over here was that we've worked pretty hard to try to make sure we have that open space in the middle to give deference to the depot itself. And our preservationists heads over here definitely want to make sure that we're not overwhelming that specific iconic structure that's already there. So, you know, I think that's where we're getting the sentiments from. And I do appreciate like having the ellipsis because like you did show some examples for reference that had the ellipsis. And also, you know, on the park at Gateway Crossings that's being completed now, we did ask them to do like more organic pathways and stuff, and that this would be, you know, something like this as an idea. It's pretty complementary to like what is being finished right now on the other side of the tracks. But yeah, I think, you know, if we were ever look at heights, I wouldn't do it like in the very center on the plan, maybe on the periphery, you know, that's kind of how I feel a little bit about it.
Could I ask, Jim and Deeksha, is the quantification of office spaces is needed for that round tower, right? Is it that was kind of your goal, is number of offices?
Well, it's really more about sort of setting a tone in the plan, and the plan will be agnostic to land use unless we want to establish caps, because like we did in the downtown precise plan, we wouldn't want the entire downtown to build out in either office or residential. So the idea is to have a mixed use neighborhood where, workplace and residential are in the right balance. And I think the intent here is similar. But these blue sites could be residential. Some of them, maybe not all of them, but I think there's also a notion that we want to, the ideal relationship in a transit-oriented center around a station like this is for the office to be in the inner ring and then residential outside of that. So I think the reason for the blue buildings where they are is we're just trying to capture that the first layer of parcels around the station and say that those are, strongly suitable for office, yet not mandatory for office. But that office does, want to be closer to the station ideally. And then I think we also should, as we get into the standards deeper, I think we do want to have the conversation about what mechanism we're going to use to maintain the right balance of office and residential.
So, and I agree with offices being by a train station. We're in a phenomenon right now that I don't think is going to last for, I think in a decade and a half, people are going to go back to offices, and you ideally want them by, a commuter station like that to kill car trips per day. What my question is if we need that space, could we, and I'm going to defer to Michael here, from a historic standpoint, that plaza with that, that train station's small and you've got the tower, and this kind of obliterates that. And this could be, again, something you talked about last time and I missed it. But to block that, again, that to me does not seem aesthetic to the train station. Michael, I mean, is that your feeling on?
Yes, absolutely, because the entire historic part extends from just south of the depot to north of the tower. That is the entire historic area there. Not to mention part of the parking lot. I believe the old water tower that used to be there was just north of Benton, about where the police station is. So I'm not sure how accurate that is.
When you bring up the water, I'm going next with that.
Yeah, because the water tower is, if you look at historic pictures, it is historic to the area and to the feel of the area, as two railroads came in there and there was considerable activity at that point. So I do know that there's other parts having to do with mission, the original mission being there as well. So I don't know. The other thing is the city of Santa Clara and Caltrain and everybody who was involved in creating the new underpass there, it also completely obliterates that, to use
Correct.
your word. So it creates a lot of shadows in the area. So that's just where I am about that. I think that, you know, if something could be there but steps down to allow light, to allow more visual, really it's at this point, from what I can see, is it just is you drive by and it's like, oh, look, an old building.
Right.
Buried in the middle of a lot of new stuff.
And that's right where the well is too.
Yeah, that's where the well is. Yeah.
So, and that's why the water tower was there. And I'm going to make a confession we're all family here. So when I was a kid, I used to make my dad drive me to water towers. Loved them. And we'd always go to that one. You know, that would be I don't want to imitate Campbell. I think we were there first with this. Could that be brought back in that area as an announcement for the people pulling into the train station? It says Santa Clara on top of it. And to Rob's point, bikes could, go underneath it. It wouldn't obliterate the vista of the train station. And then if you need more capacity, you could surround it, with the offices.
And the other thing is, can I jump in?
Yeah, I'm done.
And I'm looking at this plaza and there's a couple things. I'm struggling with the community center over there because I feel like it's just tucked off to the side. And then I start thinking of plaza and making sure it's energized, because I've been in a lot of plazas that aren't energized and you're just like, oh, great. Mountain View, they have their city hall in the plazas. They're trying to get that thing going.
But that's off to the left.
But on the day-to-day, it's mostly dead and a little cafe struggles there. But trying to, is this the place that we want to really sing, right? Is this people going down El Camino and it opens up and it draws you in, people on the train, they look to this, it draws you in. I feel like, again, I'm struggling with the community center there. It's tucked off to the side. Would the tower, this iconic building, be better pushed towards El Camino all the way? And then, I always think that, okay, how do you bring some of the depot and play off of that architecturally? Do you have shipping container structures, whether they're sort of pop-up containers that line a section of that can add, obviously you could do a farmer's market or some things there. Santana Row does a good job with their little paseo, with a little small tequila bar or whatever, but I'm just feeling like, you got this big iconic building. I know you're not designing the whole thing right now. You need to sort of a placeholder, but I feel like we need to play more off of the depot and elevate that to some level, play off the history and the architecture on a lower slung scale. It's not that we can't step up, but it's just, there's more to it. I think there has to be more to it than what this is. And then the last thing is, again, getting to the rec center, I almost feel like, okay, first of all, which side of the tracks do we think is the better side for a rec center? That's the first thing. The second thing is, because I see the big, grass area on the other side, and the pictures you showed was people doing yoga and there's this beautiful trees and stuff. Well, this thing's looking onto the El Camino. So I was thinking, well, if it's how big is it? Can it be in the green area, the big lawn area? Would that be on the end? Could it be on the end? But as a committee, I think, which side do we first of all think it would be better on tracks, just as a starting point? Because would that be better in the plaza near the train station?
Yeah, just to consider with that is we were looking for city-owned land, right? Because that's going to be difficult to
It is it is a
pull off
priority.
on, as a requirement on private land. So that was one of the things that was driving the location on that end of the police station site. But even there, that would be a long-term
Yeah.
thing, right? The police, the redevelopment of the police station site is going to be later. Like that's the after 15-year,
Right.
phase of this. So,
But Jim, like, well, so I think it's Palo Alto, they have a JCC, but there's also housing there. So it's this very dynamic building. So the plaza near the train depot, could that be sort of taller housing with the community center off to the one side?
Rob, the other thing to consider with the location of the building that we have on site in the train station and this is something we discussed last time, is that is a VTA owned parcel and is something that they consider a land bank within their like future building potential. So then would we want to tie up, I don't think the parks team, and we can go back and have another conversation, they wanted to have as an encumbered site as possible for siting an indoor rec center for them. And so that is what we were trying to achieve with the location that we had placed it at.
And it's just in that corner though, right? Because the rest of the property is
it's in that
city-owned,
corner.
right? So you've put it on the VTA parcel.
Yes, we put it at the VTA.
Specifically. Well, just that corner, yeah, the plaza, yeah, where that cylinder or ellipse is the VTA owned portion.
Yeah.
The taller tower, but it doesn't mean you couldn't put the community center on the frontage there, where they have a little ovalized, looks like maybe a cafe or something. You couldn't just take that
Yes,
corner, right?
that, I don't think that has enough space to fulfill the operations of the 47,000 square feet in the rec center.
But getting back to your, I forget which city you just cited as an
Palo
example.
Alto.
Palo Alto has
Palo
it.
Alto. You could do it. I mean, we actually looked at this of putting it as a mixed use, part of a mixed use project. And you could do that on the VTA site, have the rec center as the ground floor activator. That would be kind of nice to, just have big glass walls. You see people playing basketball inside, and that would certainly help activate. And then you could have office or residential above it. So that might be one idea.
And then maybe balance it out on the other street, not what's the one where you have down to the right, you have the street comes into the train.
The other thing, and you can't see it in this view very well, but we were trying to do some step backs, and you can see there's a roof terrace at the second level on the depot side. So that's trying to step the building back and provide some additional activation. That could be a great place to have a rooftop cafe or dining and looking down over the plaza and at the depot. So that was another thing. But if you started to think of this as a mixed-use building with the rec center, you could still do some of those other things. You could have a roof cafe at the second level, and then and then step back from there and up to, the height that felt in scale here.
I do want to point out though that an indoor, like a rec center is like a regional amenity, which does require parking. And that also plays into this thinking on how and where it should be placed. So we are thinking of having potentially some parking below this parcel. If there is a building like this which is developed, because definitely like the existing Caltrain station requires parking, and if any sort of building, whatever level of it comes up. So the last time we presented having underground parking at the station plaza.
Yeah, 2 levels is what we're
Yes.
showing.
But adding like more use, which would have other parking needs also is something that we need to think about in that respect.
Yeah, and we kind of challenged the parks team on the need for parking, asking them to think ahead 20
And
years
they
where,
said, no, we need some
pe-
parking.
people are utilizing transit. We want people to be taking transit, taking their bikes, stopping at the gym on their way home, from BART or Caltrain. But they really kind of push back, and it's like, yeah, you need some parking. So that's where Diksha's coming from.
I have one comment on the, around the depot, but kind of as you scale out on the whole project, and maybe this has been thought through, but it's feeling like there's not much retail amenity, place to grab lunch whether you're at work or at your house. I guess, are we thinking that the ground floor of a lot of these?
Diksha, you want to flip back to the
Yes.
to the
Thank you
retail
for,
frontage diagram?
yeah. That is helpful.
Yes, so those are the areas that we've thought of where we would require retail frontage. So those activities that you were talking about so that they can happen. And we try to cluster them around key nodes so that we can create some energy within those zones and not have them disperse completely by requiring them everywhere and then not really getting development, because we obviously have heard from multiple sources around how retail it's not really like money making for developers in that sense. And so we've strategized around having a lot of it around the train station itself, since we do want people to be able to like grab something from a cafe before going to the train, or like maybe have like a mini pharmacy where they like pick up their prescriptions, or like a flower shop, or like smaller items like that, and then having a retail centered along Brokoff so that also on the other side a similar activity could happen, and then centering it around the larger green spaces as they like move towards more regional retail, and allowing them to then be able to like have their lunch in the park or something as they like grab stuff from the retail in that corridor.
I think that's great. I think from the standpoint of the office market and the office developer and the future of people who are working in the office, access to those amenities and being able to run those small errands where you work is kind of the future of, employment workplace. So just keeping that in mind, I think is great, and you guys have, so thank you.
I think there were other comments along this line.
I had one more comment about the recreation center, though. I could hold it till we get back to the recreation center slide. So I think there was a later one.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. So it just I kind of agree with some of the comments. It feels like the recreation center is kind of just checked, into that corner.
Yeah.
It just feels like a checkbox item for Parks and Rec. And as much as I would love to see a recreation center, this just seems like a weird location. They really should be on a park or some other area. And it just feels like we're just trying to force it in there because it seems good, but its current location just doesn't seem to make sense to me. The idea of trying to use that as the ground floor of that plaza could maybe work. I would hate to, though, hurt maybe the retail activation there, but it is a park. So I guess my suggestion would be is there somewhere else we could find the fit it that is maybe on one of the park or envisioned park spaces? But I recognize it's the kind of, we're limited if we're trying to do it on city parcel land, but putting something where people drive right by if we're expecting a bunch of people to drive to something by the train station, it just seems like a waste of the parcel. So I don't know. It's as much as I'd love to see a rec center, it may belong somewhere else in the city if that's the case. We can't find a spot that fits holistically.
Yeah. I think the
then-
idea is that a lot of people will like come live there, like once this builds out, right? So for all of those people, they wouldn't have to like drive anywhere. They would be able to, because we're creating this amount of density in this region, they'll be able to like walk and use that rec center. So in that way, when we were having this initial conversation with the parks team, it seemed to make sense that where we're planning more density is where we try to like site the new rec center.
Yeah, but if you're gonna place it somewhere, like I recognize you're protected, but it'd make more sense to be on like Broca facing the plaza or something. But unfortunately, that's a prime spot for one of the office buildings. So there's that trade-off of, maybe the right place for it would be the other side, but
Yeah, maybe let us go back and look at more mixed use models and let's see if we can like challenge the parks team further around.
I think a mixed use rec center would be a great idea if someone could pull that off, because then you'd actually be able to like, have some development resources help. That'd be the amenity, right? The public amenity for that building for maybe density bonus or something.
Actually, like
Yeah,
along that line.
what could be cool is that in the big park space on the north side, one of those residential buildings could have a rec center as a ground floor, and it would face the park, and that would be a really compatible use without taking space in the park, but connecting to it. So that might be, something else to explore.
Yeah, one more question about that. If you were to put a rec center in a building, can that meet some of the park requirements of a development? So like if the rec center was part of the development, instead of having the park in lieu or park fee, would that count as parkland if it was dedicated? So something to look into, if that would.
I think it would help because we do count like indoor park space in like the calculations, I think, but we'll double check on that.
One more thing, let's see now, in terms of that, the rec center. Oh, are we making a statement with this to say that, because a lot of the hotels, office buildings, apartments, they all put, workout centers in and pools and all these things. So really the only difference between, we had talked, my preference is, although developers wouldn't want it because it's all about their amenities, but it makes it more resort-like than people getting out and interacting with the community. So I don't know where we're at with drawing a line on that in terms of trying to push for not having that stuff within certain developments. Because the only thing that differentiates a rec center from what they usually provide would be like a basketball court, a large court, and perhaps a running track. So.
And that's what's driving this rec center, Rob, I think, is the need for a proper gym.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things citywide that they're seeing demand for and a shortage of. And, it could be that if it's done as a mixed use for a developer, that the residents could have, it's going to be a public rec center. So there wouldn't be necessarily restriction of residents to use it, but it would also be accessible for outside.
So given all the density that we're putting on the other side, it seems to make more sense.
Yeah.
For me,
That's
on
where
the other side of the tracks, in the center, sort of central to that area. As much as I'd like it closer to my house, I can go to unfortunately, I can go to the senior center, otherwise I still have it. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, no, I think those are good comments.
I think I would push back a little bit.
Mark the geographic center and then see which mixed use building would make sense in that area.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit, like moving it to the other side of the track. Like one of the things about having it on this side of the track is that all the residents on the other side would have to come across that big barrier, and that would be a good draw for people to come over downtown. Force them to come over. And then my other comment would be like, I think it would be good to have like a rec center that's more adjacent to like an open space, because that would be a little bit more coherent. And also, people tend to like, if they're active, they tend to like to be outside, and that's a really high traffic area. And just kind of forces you to be like single use, like in that specific building. And actually, I guess like the technical question was like, was the preference for the parks team to site this on a city-owned parcel at the first place? Is that why that specific spot was proposed?
Yes.
Okay. Anything on the other comments talking about, putting in a development would put that in the context? Go ahead.
Just one more location suggestion. There is that like Salmon Academic Building side, that could also be, a location. I don't know if that's university-owned property or something as to why it's marked that way, but
University-owned property, yeah.
so maybe the university would love to partner on a public rec center that can also be used by students.
Guess I'm struggling with, and where it is now would probably would be more inviting for folks not living in there. So the greater community. I think once you go to a gym and you're inside, it doesn't matter what's around you. It doesn't need to be near an open space from that perspective. But if you move it in and you want to make it more lively, I think having it adjacent to open space would be preferential. But I could certainly see, someone said something, maybe Jim said that it wouldn't be confined to just city residents, but I could see it being something that is for city residents. A lot of communities have rec centers that are intended only for city residents.
What is the university's, I can't remember now what your own facility is, but is that something that would have appeal to students, or are they already pretty well serviced by what you've got on campus?
Yeah, we have a rec facility that's open to faculty, staff, students, spouses, and alumni. I think it probably wouldn't be a big draw.
Good to know.
Are we good on the rec center? I actually had a second thought about the iconic building things. Now that we just had the presentation about VTA, that they're doing surface parking and that it's not going to be the big parking structure built over there, I think there's an opportunity on that parcel in the future to put something iconic in there. But like, I mean, that wouldn't be something we put in here, but we can keep that in mind as a possibility in the future.
Yeah.
So round that circle for your Diksha.
Yeah. We'll make note of that. On that note, if we don't have this garage, would we want to like come down just at the start of the parking lot and then like have some sort of like way across, or?
Rob has some thought about that.
I mean, this is a big mountain to climb to even get that. But I mean, we have what, 12 years till they're gonna maybe finish all this. So now's the time to, I mean, that aligns with is that aligned with the Paseo, I think, of Gateway
Yes.
Crossing? So yeah, I mean, kind of ideal if there's a way to get across right there. But how you make that happen? I don't know. I don't know how we get the wheels turning on that one.
I think long-term VTA is thinking there would be a garage there, but they're starting with just a surface lot. Whether that would ever come to fruition, I don't know.
We're having a meeting with VTA soon, so we'll ask more about that to align our projects better.
And one of the things they talked about, it's like they actually had to enlarge the footprint to accommodate to a number of space there. So we actually have more room to play with now, like on that footprint. Yeah.
What they did was they took maintenance and put a little bit more in Hayward
Mhm.
to make the maintenance yard smaller here. So you're right, Patricia. There's actually, if they were going to build the same size garage, there's more room and flexibility. So that's something to certainly ask them about, how to get that done, get the overpass.
Okay.
For the iconic building, I just want to ask a quick question. If we were to do the 20 feet pitch, how tall would the building be in feet?
Oh, good question. Let me take out my calculator.
These are office floors, so
So 263. So we checked with the city on like what other like taller buildings are they seeing, and 21 was like a Tasman project. And so we sort of went for a similar height. But this was just to like provoke conversation and see what your thoughts are, because we were hearing in discussions that we want to go even taller, but we weren't sure how well that aligned with everyone's thought process. So this was just like a thought-provoking idea to hear from you guys about.
Yeah, thanks. I was just asking so I can compare to other buildings.
Yeah.
It does actually give, thank you for bringing this up. Since this was like this is a piece VTA parcel, wouldn't their preference be affordable housing for that parcel instead of having a office building on that site?
That's what they proposed.
Yes, that might be the case, and we will talk to them about it when we meet them in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Just wanted to note it.
Yes, I will make a note so that we have this conversation.
I think we're good on this item, unless there's anybody else. Okay. Thank you. Were there specific questions you had on the section 2, or just this is more of like informative of like what's being
Yes.
about?
So this is more of like, these are the areas that we're going to try and address through the plan, so that it is then able to like a tag team with allowing flexibility to a form-based code. But wanted to hear from you all if you think there is a certain topic which is missing that we should also be looking into within this plan itself.
Is inclusion of things like public art, is that something that would be part of the plan here or somewhere else? Like if we wanted to have like, or as part of like the form-based code?
We'll definitely have policies around public art within this plan itself. And so let me make a note of that. It won't have like specific like standards, but the city already has like a requirement, and we would have specific policies which talk about like activating areas like the station plaza itself with public art, and tying that, like we spoke last time, with like maybe the history of the train depot, or sort of like creating interactive art which like delves into that. So those would be some of the recommendations that we would make through the plan policies.
I know some cities have stuff like 1% of the arts type requirements. Is that the sort of thing you can do through a plan, or is that the sort of thing that, you know, is more of a wide citywide ordinance for requirements?
I think it's usually citywide ordinance, but we can definitely like look into it within the plan. But I think, Leslie, the city of Santa Clara does have requirements.
No, we do not. We
No?
don't currently have an ordinance.
Okay, so we will definitely.
We
look
do
into-
want one, but we don't currently have one. I know it's a work item that the city has wanted for a while, that's on our to-do list, but we don't currently have one.
If the city added one in the future, would that then also apply to something like this?
Yes. So that's definitely a good point. We will see how we can further public art within this plan in that respect.
we do have an element in the downtown precise plan. So we can sort of start there and then adapt that into something that is unique for this district.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to play on the elements of historic elements and like portraying them within public art.
Yeah, indigenous culture, I think, was a strong thread in the downtown ecology.
Okay, not hearing any other.
Can be mixed expressions, like it shouldn't, not only history, maybe some modern art, some murals or something. But my question is that have we already identified the places where the art, is it in the plan where the art would be displayed, or it will come later in the plan?
It's come later.
That would be a little later. We currently have only identified the public space network.
Okay.
But the Station Plaza would definitely be one of those locations where there would be public art recommendations. And then we can work on identifying further locations.
One thing that I think we talked about a couple meetings ago is that you do want a unique area with the station area, but you do want consistency between that and the downtown for the walker, i.e. sidewalk widths, things you don't really see, you just kind of feel.
When you say things we don't see, what are you thinking of, Dan?
Like sidewalk widths.
Okay.
You can't do that with the blocks, but yeah. My first thought is the vintage light posts might be something we want to consider. Well, or leading from downtown there. Because I think, Jim, at one time we were talking about somebody who's walking from downtown, in San Francisco, you don't think about it because there's always, 2 blocks ahead, there's something to do. And that we have a connector, maybe it through retail or, something that connects the downtown. If you're walking to the train station, it invites you to keep going. And that there's congruency, I guess the word is, between the two. That they're not identical, but there's some similarities between the two.
Yeah, the other thing that really occurs to me is that the whole idea behind the Arts Paseo, right? That's a university born concept for Franklin, for the Franklin extension, the Paseo. And I think the downtown plan really embraced that. And I think that could be a really strong connector through public art. You literally, the Franklin Street Paseo is really emphasized with public art, and that culminates in the Station Plaza, at one end and the downtown in the other. The first plaza when you get to the downtown is called Arts Commons, right? So we really strongly embraced the whole idea of the Arts Paseo, and then where that lands in the downtown, could do the same thing in the Station Plaza. And then I think, Dan, you're also suggesting beyond that, how do you tie it further into the Gateway Commons? So, that maybe starts to be a really strong thread in the public art element of the plan.
Sorry. As far as just connecting the downtown, as far as the pedestrian experience to that new area, which will have a new feeling, but there are certain amenities that are the same that that tell that pedestrian that. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I think we're good on this part.
Okay.
Unless there's other stuff you want us to comment on.
I mean, we can definitely like just flip through these if people had like specific comments within these drawings in this section.
You're gonna get strong comments on this slide.
I do have a comment. It would be helpful to show the heights of some of the adjacent existing buildings. Right, because you say 40-foot, 3 stories, I kind of go, oh geez, I mean, I need to know what's across Alviso from those to really be able to weigh in and say, do I like that or not?
As in like whether you would want to increase it from 32 to 40?
Yeah, because I need to know what's next to it, right? I just see
No,
the plan itself, but I don't know what's on the other side of
Yeah,
Alviso.
Disha, I think he's saying more just so you know the context.
Yeah.
We don't know if 40 feet height limit is okay until we see what the adjacent neighborhood height limit is.
It would be, what are the adjacent existing building uses in height, and then what's the allowed height?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
sort of twofold, right? So just so we know, and where it borders that, hey, this is how it's relating.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Just
do.
to piggyback on that point, so like when you're looking at the Benton property, you're showing 85 feet to 7 floors. Not all the buildings are actually at that height. If you can figure out like what the shorter building heights are that are closer to the Alameda, I think that would be a really good reference point for that, the 40 feet that you're referencing over there.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good. We'll do that.
Yeah, I guess I had some similar comments. Like I noticed like the Benton block now, it says like 7 stories and it's like we went through a lot of effort in the community to have that step down and now suddenly saying it's like 3 times higher. That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like because that 85, that's not 7 stories on the corner of Alameda and Benton. That is like a 3-story building. And so I think I would like to see that reflect the actual current zoning, especially for that area, because that was really carefully worked out with the community, as opposed to just, upping everything kind of without thought. Similarly, I noticed Gateway Crossings, that was an area we worked to have extra height and density because it was on the other side of the tracks, like go as big as possible. And I think your heights are actually lower than some of the buildings over there. So I would actually support that we look at everything north of the or northeast of the tracks as being as high and dense as allowed and possible. And unless there's a really strong reason to cap it, go ahead and let it be there. And that was also my last question, was about like, why is the industrial area 4 floors? Like, I thought some of this is flexible. Is that specific because we want to try to keep it as a industrial use? Or is that just, hey, it's short today, keep it short, but there's nothing over there except more industrial buildings. So, not that you're going to put the 20-story tower there, but I don't think it interferes with anything except for airplanes, which was probably what would ever be that high. So I guess I'm not quite sure on this. It's like, I'd like to see more reference, as commented earlier. I'd like to see the stuff on the west side that was already carefully negotiated with the community to actually reflect that and not just suddenly gain height. And I'd like to see the stuff where we wanted more density in the past to actually reflect that and potentially show more density. So that was kind of my list of things I came on when you came through this.
That's really great context because the Benton property was actually the first big project we all worked on, like on this side. So we have a lot of context as to like how the step downs came about and like how it eases into the community. So that's why you're gonna get a lot more scrutiny on that side. And yeah, like what Jonathan said, we wanted actually more height over at Gateway Crossings and that didn't come, they didn't do it that way. So I think the preference would be to push the height over on that side.
I think the Benton's the only project in city history where everybody came out and said yes, and there were no no's. So we should keep that in mind.
So for gateway crossings, I think our approach here was to be consistent with what is approved there
There
now.
is one taller building, so
Are
we forgot to show
you?
that one.
Yeah, we need to, okay, we need to show that
That's the
one, but
13-foot
our,
tall building, which I realized we forgot to factor in when we were showing the heights for that.
right.
But otherwise,
is-
most of the other buildings are 7 stories.
Right, but is the task force suggesting that we want to look beyond the lifetime of the current development and allow higher heights for?
That would be my suggestion. Like, I know I realistically, I don't expect Gateway Crossings plan to change anytime soon, right? Because it's brand new, it's, gone through. But like, let's let it, the second phase hasn't started. And if they built taller on that second phase because they were able to, let's let them do that, and let's put that together. Because I don't know when we're next going to revisit this area, right? It could be another 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And why restrict stuff now? Especially on that side, right?
And then likewise for the areas to the, further north where we've got it all at 85, I think there was sort of a deliberate move to place the height along Brokaw. And so we pushed all those building heights. You remember the very first plan in our 3 options was the VTA playbook inspired plan, right? And it pushed all heights up to the maximum, which I believe was the FAA maximum. And then that felt like too much. It felt like it was unrealistic, to the what the market would actually build in the area. So limiting those taller buildings to the Brokaw corridor seemed, more plausible. And it also supported the notion that Brokaw is the spine. It's the main street of this northern district. And then things step down to the 7 stories outside of that. So that was sort of the logic we followed. What I'm hearing now is that may very well be how this plays out in current times, but maybe we don't need to restrict it to that. Is that what I'm hearing?
At least from my side, it's like, I don't know if you want to restrict the height, but like to your spine thing, I think that's where you'd start talking about minimums, right? Where it's like, we'd like those to be taller or whatever. I don't know what kind of restrictions you're thinking about, if it's just max height. And I totally recognize that more than 7 stories is probably not going to be built anytime soon in that area. I mean, just because of the simple construction cost, formulas. But, if somebody decides to come in with a tower, I don't necessarily want to say, yeah, we forbid it, because maybe it does pencil out in the future. So.
When it happened over near the Levi Stadium, right? They just built some senior housing out there.
Yeah, no.
I don't know how tall those are, but they're pretty tall. And I kind of think, the challenge with all this is we do the feasibility study and all this for the now. But in reality, this is a great place to build as dense as FAA or what, because that's sort of our limit at this point, as possible, right? And I struggle with, I'm a philosophy that make sure you do it and you do it really well. And if now's not the time, meaning in the next 5 years, that you do build the height in, the ability, as John was saying, to have more height. But you still got to be smart about it, because even in China, they do really tall buildings, but they have a certain amount of space in between those tall buildings so that everybody has their privacy, and then it doesn't feel so, dense. So again, not sure challenge as an urban planner. Obviously, we're leaning on you, but just throw that out.
I assume like the form-based code or design guidelines might help with that as you go taller or you get narrower. Because I think Vancouver also does that, where they have like step-ins and they have a lot of towers, but space. So anyway, I don't want to restrict height just for the sake of restricting height. If somebody comes up with a cool building because they go 2 stories taller, I'd be sad that, they weren't able to build it.
I got a text, somebody had their hand up. Was it, are you seeing that? Was it Suds?
Yeah, so when we go to public
We're not in
comment.
public.
Okay, all right, cool. Old text. Sorry, Suds.
So then when we're thinking of taller heights, are we then like the FAA sort of like taking us to 13 floors residential, which is the roughly like 148 height limit? Does that feel, how comfortable does that feel to some of the other people we haven't heard from?
I personally think at least just having a little bit of flexibility. I'm not opposed to higher buildings, but I don't want to not be able to build because they don't make sense or meet the market. So flexibility is something I'm a proponent of.
Just to touch back a moment on time horizon, instead of, instead of perhaps looking at this based on today's thinking, which I think is easy, it's human nature to tend to do that. Do you offhand happen to know what the future horizon year is going to be for the CEQA analysis? I mean, that's probably an EIR consultant question, but where I'm going with that is, if the future year analysis is going to be 2050, then, we should keep that in mind. That puts a different lens on things. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like what's being said, which is let's let this plan express the intent we want with concentration around Brokaw, but let's not limit the heights in other areas, lower than what the FAA allows here. Because if a nice project comes along and if it follows proper separation, things that are going to be regulated by the form-based code, we want that project, even if it's off the Brokaw corridor. So I like that direction. I also wanted to come back to the comment about the light industrial. I think the reason that we established that height is because we want this to remain a light industrial area, but we want to add to it a broader spectrum of allowable uses, so that we could get some, we could get maybe some R&D, maybe some labs, and then some of the activators that we've talked about, also to like an urban winery and things like that to get people up there and activate it. But for it to remain an industrial feeling district, with that kind of energy, but also remain a buffer use to the airport, from the residential that's right next to it. So I think that's the intent. And to go to 4 stories felt like it was opening up those that greater variety of uses a little bit more, but still keeping this by and large a light industrial zone.
Jim, I'm the oldest guy here, but I got to speak for the 20-year-olds. Also music.
Yeah, music,
Gotta,
definitely.
we gotta,
Definitely.
light that up in the South Bay. There's
Yep.
nothing.
Okay. These were like the other 3 things that we looked at, if anyone had any comments around those. I know we're over time already, so I just want to touch on these really quickly. Okay. And then the last one, I think we already like discussed in detail, so we've made notes of that.
Yeah, and we're going to go back and look at some other options for this.
May want to check for hands up on this.
Okay, so those were all our items for your feedback.
Thank you. If there's no other comments from the committee members, I would open it up to public when that's appropriate. So I'm going to open this up to public comments. I don't have anybody in chamber right now, so the first person I have is Suds. Please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First off, the Gateway Crossings number of housing units was limited by our general plan, which had a station area plan, and that had a limit on the number of units. So I think Gateway Crossings would have been more dense if we didn't have that limit and they didn't want to go redo the EIR. And I think that, we should try to get as many waivers as we can with the FAA, just allows us more flexibility in what we're going to do. I know planes go over downtown San Jose, those are 22-story buildings. But in regards to the rec center, I know that we're looking only at city-owned land, and I think that is a big mistake that the city makes constantly, even when we're looking for interim supportive housing or housing projects, because, we charge a parks impact fee. If you put 5,000 units there, you're going to have at least 10,000 residents. At 2.6 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, you have people paying for 26 acres of parkland in lieu fees. So you could buy land to put the rec center wherever you feel like it. And it would make sense to put it next to a housing complex, because during the day, those cars would probably be gone and you could share the parking with the residents in the housing complex, and they would love to have a rec center. Finally, the Parks Master Plan points out that the critical need in the city of Santa Clara is an indoor basketball court gym. And I would love to have a pool there as well. Simply, I know we have a lot of pools in Santa Clara, probably more than other cities, but when you couple that with like a little complex, your staffing gets shared among different uses. But having an indoor gym is a real need for the city, where people can play volleyball or badminton or basketball there. So, but I think we should not limit ourselves to city-owned land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jane. Next person I have is James. Please go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good to hear from you.
All right. Hey, just got some bullet points of different pieces of information. 575 Benton. It was they have a parking garage in the middle, which is a 6 or 7 story parking garage. I think it's like 7 stories right on the the Alameda. And then from the Alameda, when it goes down Benton, it goes from 6 stories down to 5 stories mid-block, down to 4 stories, and then on the exterior, right on the corner of Viso, I think it's either 3-story townhomes that back up to a 4-story multifamily project. I believe it's 355 units with about 20,000 square feet of retail. So it fans down from 7, 6, 5, 4, then the townies. Also, regarding, one project I would recommend you guys all take a look at is 101 and Marsh Road. David Bohannon in the city of Menlo Park. He built I want to say it's a 12-story office building. And the city of Menlo forced him to put a gym on the first 2 floors. So I believe that gym is about 40,000 square feet. It's 2 stories, about 20,000 square foot plates. And if you could do maybe something like that, the biggest gyms are like the super sports, which are about 70,000 square feet, which would be about 2 or 3 floors, where you could put 2 or 3 floors of a gym and then, put office space on floors 3 all the way to 12, 15 stories, whatever the number you guys decide. And it's very a successful gym. You got Facebook on top with the gym down below. And that project took, I think, Menlo about 10 years to put together. But and then if you did something like that, where if you put the gym or the recreational center on the bottom 2 floors, then you could take that city of Santa Clara land and maybe turn that into like outdoor basketball courts or some type of athletic, more, either outdoors and or indoors. So you can maybe maximize the 2 different concepts and maybe even combine the 2. And I think that's all I got. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Viso. I don't see any other hands. So I think that's all we have for public comments. Do we need to take any actions on this item, or is that more informative? So I think we're good. Thank you for your presentations tonight, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Great comments tonight. We will give all of this some good thought and come back around on our next get together.
Looking forward to your updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so we're done with the items. So the next section we have is public presentations and comments. Is there anyone that would like to address the task force on items that are not on this agenda? And this is both for public and also for our members. Seeing none. So we'll move on to staff report.
This is already touched on, but as Disha mentioned, we will be kicking off the CEQA process next week. We have a joint meeting with WRT along with David J. Powers, who is the WRT sub-consultant for CEQA. Since we have a clear project description now with the preferred alternative, we will be starting that process next week.
Thank you. I think that's, are there any other announcements or other items? Or staff or anybody that would like to inform? Okay, I think that's it. Then we're at adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting to the next regular scheduled meeting on August 21st?
So moved.
That move second. Those who are in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, abstain, and we're adjourned at 8:25. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.